protein before bed. You fall asleep just fine. Then 3 a.m. hits. Your eyes pop open, your thoughts start racing. You have no idea why. The problem is your brain never fully checks out even at night. It needs fuel around the clock. When blood sugar drops too low at night, your body panics and releases cortisol to fix it. That cortisol spike yanks you straight out of sleep. Try eating 15 to 25 grams of protein about 30 to 60 minutes before bed. Protein digests slowly, keeping blood sugar stable all night, making it far less likely you'll wake up. Eggs, Greek yogurt, or a basic protein shake all do the job without feeling too heavy. Most people assume late-night eating ruins sleep. Turns out the right food actually protects it. Try it for a few nights. You should notice the effects pretty fast. Those random wake-ups disappear because your body has nothing left to fix. Go to bed early. There is a moment at night where you suddenly feel more awake than you did an hour ago, and it tricks you into staying up longer than you should. That boost comes from a late-night rise in alerting hormones. As you push past your natural sleep window, your body increases cortisol and adrenaline just enough to keep you going. It feels like energy, so you stay up. It always seems like a good idea at the time, but as it turns out, it's rarely a good decision to ignore your own biology. Later, when you finally get into bed, your body hasn't fully settled. You're tired, but your system is still running at a level meant for staying awake. Going to sleep earlier prevents that second wind from happening in the first place. When you align with your natural rhythm, cortisol continues dropping the way it's supposed to. When you don't, it lingers. People treat bedtime like a suggestion. Your body treats it like a timing system, and it tends to enforce it whether you cooperate or not. Ashwagandha. One supplement has repeatedly lowered cortisol in human trials, yet most people take it in a way that barely has any effect. Ashwagandha works through the HPA axis, the system that controls how your body responds to stress. In randomized controlled trials, doses around 300 to 600 milligrams per day have reduced cortisol levels by roughly 20 to 30%, along with noticeable drops in perceived stress and anxiety. That's a significant change. Where people get it wrong is consistency and quality. It needs to be taken daily, and it needs to be a standardized extract with a reliable withanolide content. Otherwise, you're essentially guessing. It also builds gradually. You're not going to feel a dramatic difference the first time you take it, which is usually when people decide it's completely useless. Waiting a couple of weeks for something to work is apparently a very long time when you've been stressed out for years. Phosphatidylserine. There is a compound that can blunt your stress response that most people have never heard of, and the name sounds like something you'd hear in a pharmaceutical commercial. Phosphatidylserine is part of your cell membranes, especially in the brain, where a lot of your stress signaling is coordinated. When stress hits, your body releases cortisol, then brings it back down once the situation passes. In some people, that recovery takes longer than it should, so the stress response stays activated long after the stressful moment has come and gone. This is exactly where phosphatidylserine comes in. Studies show that people taking 400 to 600 milligrams had lower cortisol after intense mental stress or hard exercise compared to those given a placebo. It seems to help your body shut the stress response down more efficiently once it has already been triggered. That makes it different from something like ashwagandha. Ashwagandha works more on baseline stress. Phosphatidylserine is more like damage control after the alarm has already gone off, which is useful because for some people the alarm has no idea when to stop. Magnesium glycinate. A lot of people take magnesium, feel no difference, and assume it is useless. The issue is usually the form, not magnesium itself. Magnesium glycinate is one of the forms that actually gets absorbed well and tends to have a calming effect without the digestive issues other forms are known for. It interacts with GABA receptors, which are involved in slowing down neural activity and preparing your body for sleep. Though the effectiveness varies somewhat from person to person, studies consistently show improvements in sleep quality, reduced stress markers, and lower nighttime arousal, especially in people who are deficient in magnesium, which is more common than people realize. Once your cortisol levels are where they should be, your nights become calmer, you stop fighting sleep, and you'll wonder why no one told you about magnesium before. Breathing techniques. There is a way to lower your stress response in under a minute using nothing but your breath. But people tend to forget about it when they could use it the most. Your breathing and your nervous system are in constant conversation. When you're stressed, your breath becomes short and shallow, which your brain reads as confirmation that something is wrong. It responds by keeping cortisol elevated. The loop continues until something interrupts it. You can interrupt it deliberately. Extending your exhale longer than your inhale is one of the most direct ways to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the system that handles relaxation and calming. A simple pattern like inhaling for 4 counts and exhaling for 7 to 8 is enough to move the dial. Research shows that even a few minutes of controlled breathing can produce measurable reductions in cortisol and heart rate within a single session. The reason people don't use it more is that it feels too simple. When stress peaks, the instinct is to do something active, not just breathe. But that's exactly when breathwork can help the most. You already have the tool. You can do it anywhere. You just have to remember to use it, instead of reaching for your phone like usual. L-Theanine with caffeine. You think you have to give up coffee because it raises stress hormones, but there's a way to keep drinking it without the same cortisol spike. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine, the compound that makes you feel tired, which is why it boosts alertness and focus. The downside is that it also stimulates your stress response, raising cortisol, and in some people, triggering that familiar jittery anxious feeling that follows a strong cup. L-theanine is an amino acid found naturally in green tea that promotes calm alertness without sedation. When taken alongside caffeine, it smooths out the stimulation. Studies have found the combination produces better focus and attention than caffeine alone, with significantly less of the anxiety and cortisol elevation. The ratio that tends to work well is roughly 200 milligrams of L-theanine for every 100 milligrams of caffeine. Many pre-made supplements already combine them, but you can also take L-theanine capsules alongside your morning coffee. The energy stays, the anxiety drops. Most people notice the difference within a few days of trying it. Zone 2 Cardio. Going for a simple walk feels like it's not doing much of anything, but it does more for your cortisol levels than more intense workouts. Harder exercise is not always better, especially when it comes to stress hormones. High-intensity training signals your body to release cortisol because, from your body's perspective, something demanding is happening and it needs to mobilize energy fast. That response is useful in short bursts, but if you are already running high on stress, piling more cortisol on top is like yelling at a stressed person to just relax. Zone 2 cardio works differently. It keeps your heart rate in a moderate range, roughly 60 to 70% of your maximum, where your body is working but not alarmed. At this intensity, you get the circulatory and metabolic benefits of exercise without the hormonal cost. Regular Zone 2 training actually improves how efficiently your body regulates cortisol overall. A 30-minute walk qualifies. So does a slow jog, a casual bike ride, or anything that lets you hold a conversation without gasping. No pain, no gain isn't all it's cracked up to be. Sometimes it just means more pain and more cortisol. Physical touch. One of the best ways to lower stress hormones is something you are definitely not doing for the health benefits, even though it turns out you could be. Hugging, holding hands, and yes, of course, sex, all trigger the release of oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone. Oxytocin and cortisol operate in opposition. When one rises, the other tends to fall. Your body is wired to interpret safe physical contact as a signal that the threat is over and it can stand down. Research shows that even brief physical contact, as little as 20 seconds of hugging, can produce a measurable drop in cortisol and blood pressure. The effect is stronger with people you feel safe around, but even a handshake or a pat on the back registers in the nervous system. This is also why isolation tends to make stress worse. It is not just psychological. The absence of touch removes one of the body's most reliable ways to reset. Science just gave you permission to cuddle, or do more if you'd both like to. You're welcome. Meditation. People try meditation for a few minutes, get bored, and decide it doesn't work, which would be like going to the gym once and expecting a result. When you sit quietly and focus your attention, you're signaling your nervous system that it's time to calm down. Your brain interprets stillness and controlled breathing as safety, which pulls the brake on your stress response, allowing cortisol levels to drop. Meditation is more effective than most people realize. Studies have found consistent practice can reduce cortisol levels by up to 20%, with additional improvements in perceived stress, anxiety, and emotional regulation. The key word is consistent. A single session produces a temporary effect. Daily practice rewires the overall response. The problem for most people is they sit down expecting silence and get a flood of thoughts instead, then conclude they're doing it wrong. The thoughts aren't the problem. Noticing them without following them is what you're actually practicing. Start with 5 minutes. No app or special music required. Sit, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. When your mind wanders, as it most likely will, just bring it back. The people who say meditation is worthless are usually the ones who could use it the most. Reduce nighttime light exposure. You can be completely exhausted and still lie there awake because you've convinced your brain it's still daytime. Light is your body's primary signal for what time it is. Specifically, blue light, the kind emitted by phones, laptops, and overhead LEDs, suppresses melatonin and keeps your alerting systems running longer than they should. Without melatonin levels rising the way they're supposed to, cortisol doesn't drop. Both hormones are tied to your circadian rhythm, and disrupting one disrupts the other. The hour before bed matters more than most people care to admit. Bright screens and overhead lighting during that window can delay your body's wind-down sequence significantly, making it harder to fall asleep and easier to wake up in the middle of the night. Dimming your environment in the evening is one of the simplest changes you can make. Warmer, lower lighting sends your brain a different message. Blue light filtering glasses help if screens are unavoidable, but the best thing you can do is to turn it all off at least an hour before bedtime. The signals you send in that 1 hour are the ones your body acts on all night. Omega-3. Some people are more reactive to stress, and part of that comes down to what's in their diet. Omega-3 fatty acids, particularly EPA and DHA, found in fatty fish and fish oil supplements, play a direct role in regulating inflammation and modulating the stress response. When your omega-3 levels are low, your HPA axis, the system that controls cortisol release, tends to be more reactive. Small stressors trigger bigger hormonal responses than they should. A landmark study found that medical students taking 2.5 grams of omega-3 daily showed a 20% reduction in cortisol levels alongside a significant drop in anxiety compared to those taking a placebo. That is a meaningful result from a supplement you already know you should be taking. Most people are not getting enough through diet alone unless they are eating fatty fish several times a week. A quality fish oil supplement fills the gap without much effort. Do your research and get one that doesn't give you fish burps. Your partner will thank you. Foods that lower cortisol. A few foods have measurable effects on stress hormones, but they're rarely the ones people reach for when they're feeling stressed. Dark chocolate tends to be the crowd favorite when this topic comes up, and for once, the popular answer is actually correct. It contains flavonoids that interact with stress pathways in the brain. Studies have found that regular consumption is associated with lower cortisol and reduced psychological stress. The catch is that it needs to be high cocoa content, 70% or above, not the sugar-heavy versions that most people prefer. Fermented foods are less obvious but worth including. A significant portion of serotonin production happens in the gut, and a disrupted gut microbiome is linked to heightened stress reactivity. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, and similar foods support the gut environment in ways that appear to have upstream effects on cortisol regulation. Leafy greens and avocados contribute through magnesium, which circles back to what was covered earlier. Bananas and sweet potatoes help stabilize blood sugar, which keeps those nighttime cortisol spikes from triggering in the first place. You can try to fall asleep or stay asleep all you want, but if your cortisol is high, it's not going to happen. What actually works is a few simple changes that naturally help calm your body and drop your cortisol levels without you trying to force it. Thanks for watching. Sleep well.